More than a year after our friends at the Dairyland Sentinel first sought public records about how it was that the Department of Public Instruction here in Wisconsin unilaterally changed how exactly students were going to be graded on the forward exam, the state's proficiency exam, the standard setting process. How exactly were students going to be rated as proficient or behind a grade level, things like that? Remember, this blew up into a massive scandal after there was a huge discrepancy in the 2024 forward exam and the national education standardized testing. Wisconsin students looked like they were doing way better on the state test, but the national testing showed yikes. Well, the Dairyland Sentinel, for a year, tried to get documentation. Hey, how exactly did this go down? How exactly did this process work? Well, it turns out after they DPI finally, thanks to the intervention of the Institute for Reforming Government, fantastic organization here in Wisconsin, great friend of the Dan O'Donnell show as well, intervened and threatened a lawsuit. In an email to the Dairyland Sentinel yesterday, the DPI confirmed that the way that the standards were changed was at a 4-day resort at the Chula Vista in the Wisconsin Dells. It was a 4-day conference at a luxury upscale water park resort in June of 2024, with the total cost to taxpayers $368,885. Not only that, people who attended the conference weren't allowed to talk about it. Participants, according to the Dairyland Sentinel, had to agree, quote, they will not share workshop feedback or workshop recommendations on any media, including social media. There were no recordings of this, and the DPI did not provide requested meeting minutes from the event. Participants couldn't even take their notes. They had to leave all notes in the meeting room, where they were collected by facilitators and then presumably flushed down a water slide to get rid of them. Now, once those standards were changed, basically, they tried to change the cut scores, meaning what would constitute proficient under Wisconsin's forward exam. And they also changed the standardized scoring so that it would take Wisconsin out of alignment with both past years. So you couldn't compare student performance from 2024 to, say, 2016. So you could say, hey, students are doing much, much better or much, much worse. It also took students out of alignment with national standards. But the percentage of those who were rated as proficient, which means at grade level, were far lower on national testing. According to IRG, just 31% of fourth graders scored proficient. That just means at grade level in reading, far below the 52% claimed by the 2024 forward exam. That's down from 33% in 2022, 36% in 2019 on the national test. So not only do we see national test scores declining, we also saw a concerted effort to make it seem as though students in Wisconsin are doing better than they are if 52% of them are proficient at grade level in reading, but only 31% are proficient on a different test, which presumably was either much harder or much more difficult to get to the proficient level in terms of cut scores. Something was going on here, and it wasn't student performance. It was an effort by attendees at this conference to simply fudge the numbers. 39% scored below basic. Basic is a grade level behind. 39% were below basic. That means 39%, 40% of fourth graders in Wisconsin are unable to read at a grade level before the grade level they're at. They're 2 grades behind in reading. In mathematics, 42% of 4th graders scored proficient on the national test, not 54% as the forward exam claimed. Wisconsin's black students ranked last in 4th grade reading and 4th grade mathematics, scoring 8% and 5% proficient, respectively. Obviously, they scored much, much higher on the state exams, whose books were cooked. 8% of Wisconsin's black 4th graders are at grade level in reading, 5% at math. Now, as a result of this incredible report, the Joint Finance Committee of the state legislature has temporarily frozen $1 million in funding for DPI following the investigation into the $368,000 water park gate. So all of these teachers, all of these stakeholders, and Dairyland Sentinel has actually done the job that the DPI has been desperate to hide, and they have actually published the names of all of the people from all of the various school districts. And yes, there were dozens and dozens and dozens of school districts. Milwaukee Public Schools, unsurprisingly, sent like 6 delegates to be wined and dined with strawberry daiquiris and trips to the wave pool in order to be convinced to make it look like DPI scores were a lot better than they actually were. This is a massive scandal, ladies and gentlemen. This is yet more proof that Dr. Jill Underly, who stunningly got herself reelected as state superintendent last year. This, by the way, this sort of stuff is why even Governor Tony Evers recognizes what a disaster Underly is. He refused to endorse her reelection bid. Sound familiar? He recognizes that both of his lieutenant governors, his former one, Mandela Barnes, and his current one, Sarah Rodriguez, are similarly so terrible that he's not endorsing either one in the race for governor. He never endorsed Underly. She actually faced a primary, not just from the right, but also from the left. She faced a challenger from the left, and notably, Evers did not endorse. Big reason for that is because of just how often. It wasn't just student test scores that were unilaterally changed. You might remember they also unilaterally changed the cut scores on DPI's report cards for schools and school districts. Not a single school in the entire state was failing last year simply because they made it practically impossible for a school or school district to fail. They just lowered the standards so much that you basically needed to score a 25 out of 100 in order to fail. Now we find out they're spending $368,000 to basically bribe all of these people from various school districts to go along with their plan. They're telling them, don't take any notes. If you take notes, we're going to collect them. Don't tell anybody what we're talking about here. They were rather obviously talking about cooking the books, and they were doing so while suckling on the taxpayers' teat to the tune of $368,000. Forget about freezing $1 million in funding. Take all funding from DPI, all of it, all of it. This is a massive scandal, and until Dr. Jill Underly answers for it, not another freaking dime.
Keep in touch with